mechanics.
The one that gets everything.
You know, I don't know. I mean, I said earlier, for me, this is one of the easiest ones. And you're probably shaking your head, no, it's not. Well, let me explain why. Mechanics is one of the easiest things because, for me, because I spend time on it. Because the mechanics is all about how something is put together. It's the foundation of that design. And if it's not put together properly, it's not going to stay together. And as a retail florist, you can make something pretty all day, but if it's not mechanically sound and it's not deliverable, then it won't make it to the consumer intact. And that's where you have problems. Most mechanics are to be hidden, not to be seen. There is quite a bit of stuff that we have now in the floral industry that we can use as mechanics, but it's also decorative. And as long as it's decorative mechanics, then it's able to show. But if it's a florist wire or anchor tape or something of that nature, that has to be definitely covered. So when we are evaluating designs, there a lot of times when you walk up to a design, a lot of things are very obvious and it's easy to see right away. The better the design is, the harder it is to evaluate the mechanics. And I shouldn't say harder, but it gets more nitpicky, because when something's really good, then we get down really close and we get really up close and personal and we inspect it rather than just standing back at the table. You know, we get down or we bring that arrangement up to our face and we're spinning it and looking and we're really inspecting it. Because it's one thing to be a good designer, but it's also another thing to be a good designer with great mechanics. So we're going to start off with a boutonniere. And Melissa will probably have to take this up to the camera. I want you to take this one to the camera and then we'll see if anyone can jump on chat and tell me what's wrong with the mechanics on this. The first thing that jumps out is their taping is really sloppy and they missed a big section there. The wire is showing and the wire was not clipped out. A lot of times if you've been in one of my classes at the floral clinic, you've heard me say once you bend that wire, you tape a little bit, then you want to thin that wire out to keep your stems as straight and as smooth as possible and keeps it from getting real thick and bulky. This one was not done that way. And we see this all the time, teachers. And the reason I'm stressing this is because this is an area that you can work on and change. If everybody out there is doing this, is having the same problem, those are the areas you need to work on really hard because it's going to separate your kids from the next. But they also clipped it, and if you look, you can't hardly see it, but they clipped it in the bottom of it. It must have been too long, so when they clipped it, they didn't go back and tape it. So that at the end of it, you see the end of the stem. So there's quite a bit of mechanics going on here, okay? Okay. If you can see right there, there's no tape. It's like when they were wrapping it, they skipped the space and came down here. There is no tape right there. And you can see the stem and you can see the wire. Can you see that wire? Okay. All right. Here's another one, Melissa. I'll let you pull this one up there and see if they catch this one.
There we go. They're saying the wire is not covered all the way.
Yes, yes. I did this on purpose because people pierce this, hairpin it, and then they don't tape high enough to cover their wire. And I know it's not even a half an inch showing on either side, but it's still mechanics showing, and that's deduction of points, okay? There again, the next thing is, if you notice, the stems were not thinned out. It's still bulky down at the bottom. The taping appears to be good. However, it didn't go high enough, and they didn't thin out their stems quite enough. They didn't quite cover the wire. You see it right there? There's one, and right there. That makes sense. Right there, see that wire? And right there. They should have taped up higher to cover that mechanic. And then you see how fat that stem is right there and how bulky it is? The wire needed to have been thinned out right there. So we have one more. And on this one, I'll let them hold this up. And let's see what your opinion is on this one. Okay. What you think?
They think it looks good.
The taping on this is really good. Taped up just high, and the tape looks pretty even around here. Looks really good. The one thing that I would have deducted a little bit of points is I think they could have thinned it just a little bit thinner down there. And then this one was the one that was taped really well. Okay. I would have just liked to have had it thinned off. You see how that's uneven right there? I would have made it a little more smoother right there and thinner. And like I said earlier, you know, it's one thing to be a good designer, but it's another thing to be a good designer with good mechanics. And I've even seen people that have impeccable mechanics, but they're more of a traditional designer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there again, these are little deductions that, like taping that little bit of wire there, absolutely could have took another second or two to do and saved a whole lot of points. So I hope that helps you on that. So basically, I take my carnation and I cut it at an angle, sharp angle. I take my wire and I pierce it. And then I fold it down. I've taken my wire and I've placed it through the flower. And then I'm going to bend it down like that, okay? Now, what I was referring to, thinning it, you see we have these wires down there, and by the time we tape it, it could get bulky. So what I do, what I do then is I will take and cut that wire out and thin it. So then there's just one piece of wire coming down. Does that make sense, folks? Okay. So you want to be very careful on that. And I think with wiring and taping a carnation like that, it's just repetition. I mean, I know supplies are can be an issue at times, but take that carnation, wire it, and if you're gentle with it and you haven't damaged it, wire it, tape it. If it's too thick, untape it, snip some of that wire out, and try taping it again. You ought to get at least 2 or 3 attempts out of one carnation if you're careful and you're not damaging it, okay? Another mechanics that we have a big problem with is foam, okay? You'll hand me that other one there. We had, and I'm not going to call any names, but one of my students in the local area went to competition, regional competition, and you get in a hurry. I know that in your mind, you're nervous, whatever it may be. But she forgot to put water in her bud base. She made a beautiful bud base, but it didn't have any water in it. So you want to take that time and slow down, and you want to, on a design like this, you want to get down at the table at eye level, and you want to spin it, and you want to look and see if you see any foam. You know, this one's pretty well covered, and we're good there. On this one, not so much. And I can see it straight up, and I'll come to the camera. Put me a light right in here. See if we can see that. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there's foam showing right there. Big time. Okay? That's a big no-no. Uh-oh. We come right here. See that foam? There's foam showing right there. That's a no-no. Okay? And a lot of times if you're standing up over it, you're not going to see it. You got to either get down on this level or bring it up. You have to get down on its level, or you have to bring it up to eye level and look to find that. Okay? That's easy points, folks. Scraps of leather leaf they have laying on their table or the floor, pick it up. If it's still viable, put it in here, cover these up. That's easy points, okay? When you design like this, if you preach it every day, you got to cover that foam. And I'll show you, I did have a knife, but I didn't bring it. One thing I tell my students all the time, the more foam you have, the bigger the piece of foam, the more surface you have to cover, okay? So in that dish that we're going to talk about in a little bit, I have a quarter, 1/3 of a block in here. And as you see, it's square. As you see, it's square, okay? But what I'll do is I'll take a knife, and you see how I trim those edges down? Carve it down. That's less foam I have to cover, okay? So once you tape it in, I'm going to show you right here. Well, she brought me the big knife.
I brought you the little one too. I didn't know what size.
Let me have the little one. So then I will take, and I'll come up to the camera where you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. You see those corners? You see those corners there? I'm going to take and just carve them off. You see what I'm doing? And then I'll notch that out. You see how that is? Come and get that corner off. Notch it out. And voila. You see? Just do all angles. And I have it smooth like that. You don't have those big blunt corners there, and that's less foam you have to cover. Now, while I was standing there, I threw my pieces into my dish. Don't leave them in there. I just did that because I didn't want foam on the floor. But you can see how I've done that. And that will help with this when you're trying to cover up these, cover up the foam. All right, we're going to show you another one talking about foam. We talked about this one earlier today when we were talking about symmetrical arrangements. And I told you how well this one was put together. Symmetrical meaning it's like a mirror. Both sides are duplicated. And when we looked at this, we were like, oh, this, they did a wonderful job on this. And from the front, I'm looking in, I'm down in here, I don't see any foam showing, jam up. Then I turn it around, and they were in such a hurry. They were in such a hurry that they didn't cover any foam in the back. Can you see that? No coverage. That is a typical mistake. That could cost a lot. I mean, this arrangement was beautifully executed on the front. I mean, this would be, the balance was there, the color is there. I mean, it's rocking it. And then you turn it around and see that. Now, that deduction can only be taken off in one area, and that's under mechanics. They could have got high scores on everything else. Mechanics will get below average on it. I mean, because that's a large area in there. So this just drug this overall score on this arrangement way down. Okay? You may not think it is, but if we're scaling, just say for example, throwing out numbers, if you're scaling 1 to 5 and you got 4s, 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 and a 5 and a 5, and then you get down and you got a 2, that's going to drag your score down tremendously. And that is just simply from being in a hurry. Okay? All right. Someone had asked about taping foam. If you feel comfortable in taping foam twice, like a crisscross, that's fine. I personally normally tape just once, but if I use this green tape, and also folks, if you're going to do a 9 carnation design and you're putting one in the middle, don't tape straight across the middle. Tape just a little off of the center. But if you use this tape, it definitely has to be covered. It can't be showing for mechanic purposes, okay? You follow me? This can't show, all right? Any questions coming in?
On a one-sided design, would you still add a few flowers to the back as well, or is it okay to just have greenery?
Just greenery? It depends. It depends. For me, if it's a podium and it's going up against a podium, or a church arrangement that's up against the church pulpit, then no, just greenery would be fine. If it's sitting at a head table and there's nothing, and people are sitting directly behind it, I may put a few stems tucked down in, nothing sticking out like the front, just something low in, just to give a point of interest. Okay. All right. Another one on mechanics. This one, when I picked it up, this one's loose. This flower's loose. The mechanics is they did not insert this far enough to get it in there. You see what I'm saying? So it was unsecure. The next thing is I pull it up and I start spinning it, and I'm seeing foam that's not covered right in here, right around the edge. You still have to cover this foam. Get down on eye level and check it out. Even though this is one that we talked about earlier, the line is not very defined, the focal's not very defined, and we got mechanical issues, okay? Mechanic issues. So this one is going to get a lower score, you know, from across the board. Foam, foam, foam. If you're dealing with foam, it's an easy thing. If you're dealing with a water vase arrangement and you're gridding and you're using tape, you want to make sure that all your tape is covered. Okay? Any questions on mechanics?